I'm from Chicago, and we got to use a trip up to Chicago. We don't get turnouts like this at all up there. Oh, are you? Where you live? Where'd you live at? Yeah. Were you in Minneapolis? My sister-in-law lives down in Burnsville. Me and the wife go up there quite a bit. She's down in Burnsville. That's a transition from Minneapolis to Atlanta. Oh, were you? Okay. Okay. That's a good drive. So I work downtown. I live just over the border in Indiana. I'm 6 miles from the border, so it's 35 miles for me to get in. I can get into Chicago quicker than most of the guys that live out in the suburbs, in the Chicago suburbs can. Yeah.
That area, just to get to the downtown, it's just like, the good thing is the train system there is
No, especially for the Illinois suburbs, it's good. For Indiana, we do have. I could take a train into downtown, but for me to take that train and where our office is compared to where the train station is, it ends up being it's a 2-hour commute for me if I take the train. I could be downtown driving in an hour, so I drive in every day. Every man.
All right, how's everybody doing? We get started. Welcome everybody. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good. Just a little, intro, housekeeping. I'm Eric with Shanasoft, one of the co-founders. Founded the user group with Puppet about 3 years ago. So we do a lot around Puppet, obviously integration, DevOps. So we wanted to get a meetup together to talk about all that and share best practices. So you got a sign-in sheet. If you guys could let us know who you are. We're also looking for speakers. Anybody wants to be involved with the meetup too. So let me know afterwards if you guys are. But we're excited tonight. We got Chris Roddy from Puppet, who's a senior consultant. And he's going to go over code management and RTNK, and then we'll do a little open discussion at the end. But again, welcome everybody. Bathrooms are down the hall. If you go out this door, straight down that hallway on the right. So good to have y'all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, good evening. Good evening. I'm afraid I have not been able to make it to one of these meetups before, which is slightly embarrassing because I've been at Puppet for about 1.5 years. But I do have an excuse, which is this is actually the first time that I've been in town that there's been one of the meetups. So, I have, as far as I'm concerned, 100% attendance record. But I do look forward to coming more often, and especially if someone else is speaking. So. What I want to talk about this evening is the problem of code management and deployment. Not using Puppet to deploy things, but how we actually manage the materials that Puppet uses to do what it does. So, if you were looking forward to a talk about using Puppet to manage your services, I'm afraid that's not what you're going to get this evening. But I do think this is important because getting a good workflow going, getting a good process for putting Puppet code onto the master so that you can use it and test it and promote it in a sane and repeatable way is one of the best things you can do in order to facilitate the actual system management that comes forward. So, in pursuit of that, I'd like to talk about 5 topic areas. The first one is going to be just an overview of what we mean by a Puppet environment. As of 2015, we're on what I see as kind of the 3rd generation design for how Puppet environments work, how we put code into the master, figure out which code we're going to get, which nodes are going to get it. So we'll talk about 3 different ways that that's gone through, and we'll also talk about the next section, ways that people have organized Puppet code to deploy into those environments. I think most of us, if we've been working with Puppet for any period of time, have worked with a monolithic repository where we have a lot of Puppet code that kind of goes into one place. Some of us have been more fortunate and have had a modular approach, and that's kind of the approach that R10K allows. So I'm going to compare those two things, then we'll get into talking about what kind of workflow R10K allows you to have for deploying your Puppet code. So we'll talk about what you can do with it, how it works, we'll talk about what you're going to need to get in place to get it working, and I'll do a section on master configuration so you can see just what's going to be involved in getting your infrastructure onto it if you're not already using it. I have a demo prepared there if there's time. Don't know how long this is going to go. If you have any important questions, please do feel free to shoot your hands up. If you want to hold until the end, that's okay too. But I'd rather get things clarified before we get to the end, if that's what you want. So then, let's talk about Puppet environments. What is a Puppet environment? If you look in our documentation on docs.puppetlabs.com, this is the definition we have. And it says that a Puppet environment is an isolated collection of Puppet nodes which a master can serve with completely different site manifests and module paths. And depending on how you use it, that is entirely true. I think, though, that I'd like to propose a slight revision to this. And after we talk about some of the things that you can do to move code from one group of machines to the next with R10K, I think there's a better definition of that is going to be a little bit more useful in your efforts to manage Puppet code. Kind of the first way that a lot of us probably encountered environments were the original, like, old school config file environments. And if you look at puppet.conf, it would look something like this if I were using config file environments. Of course, I've got my main and my agent, my master sections, but I've also got sections where I've explicitly defined 3 environments here. And if I've only got 3 groups of machines, and if I don't have a whole lot of Puppet code, this works pretty well. I get the code that I want, put it in place on the Puppet master, I exercise it in the lower environments, see if it does what I want, then I can move it up. But if I've got something more complex than, say, 3, 6, maybe 10 of these, things start to get a little bit difficult. So a lot of us eventually moved on to what we call dynamic environments. And these are still, if you look at our documentation, we talk about config file environments. We're referring to both of these designs. Environments that are defined here in the configuration file, as opposed to using the new directory environments that I'll talk about in a second. What I'm doing here is a little bit different. I don't have explicitly defined environments down at the bottom of the configuration like I had in the previous version. What I do have is I'm defining the module path and the site manifest location, but I've got this $ environment variable there that says, take the location, take the name of the environment that the agent has requested, and shove that into the string, and then go find the directory. And what this lets you do is lay out a whole bunch of environments in one directory here. So etc Puppet environments, give them by name, they've all got their own modules directories, they've all got their own manifests, and you're off and running. And there were a couple of problems with this that didn't really work out so well. We wanted to add some features that relied on an ability to enumerate the environments that existed. And something we noticed in looking at the way that people use Puppet environments was this, is that no matter which style configuration you were using and no matter what you were doing with it, they all kind of tended to have mostly the same stuff in it. And this is an artificial representation, but it does reflect the kind of environments that you see out there in the wild. You've got a dev environment, and it's got its own higher data, and it's got its own site manifest directory. Maybe it's got some node manifests in there for individual nodes, and you've got a modules directory with a bunch of individual modules installed, and so on. And then you look at the QA environment, and it's got the same stuff. It's got a higher data, and it's got a site manifest, and it's got modules. And there's slight variations here. The site manifest is going to have some different stuff, especially in lower environments. You're going to be testing out new configurations, things that are kind of unproven. But stuff tends to make its way through. The thing you notice is it's always kind of the same structure. So the latest kind of implementation of environments that we've got now is what we call directory environments. Instead of saying that there's going to be this variable called the module path, and then you're going to take the environment variable and just kind of splice that in there and go look up the path where the modules are. We just explicitly say that there is this location called the environment path, where we expect to find a whole bunch of directories that are shaded and formatted like Puppet environments. And we've also got a base module path that we can define for the whole server. So you can have individual environments. You've got access to this base module path that you can use in each environment. And then you have an environment.conf that you can configure inside each one. So if you need to test settings in different environments, you can do that. That's something that you can't do with either the config file or environment systems, is you can't have settings, arbitrary settings at least, that apply to a specific environment. You can control the module path, you can control where it finds the site manifests, and that's kind of about it. So basically, this is almost all that I typically have in the environment.conf. The per environment configuration file in the directory environment setup is one line, module path equals, and then I've got the modules directory in there. When I'm using R10K, I'll usually have a second modules directory as well. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then I just append the base module path on there. This is especially important if you've got something, some site-wide collection of modules you need to have available to keep all the machines in some sort of compliance or something like that. It's important for us with Puppet Enterprise because we use Puppet to manage Puppet. So we have to have some modules that we know are shipped with the product, and those will go in the base module path. As far as the site manifest, we found that pretty much everyone who was using the manifest directory wanted every manifest in there to be processed every time. So that's the default behavior. You can turn that off by explicitly setting the manifest directive if you want to, but this is kind of the future of Puppet environments. And in fact, if you intend to upgrade, it won't really be optional. But something else we're seeing a lot of is per environment hire data. One thing you can do is you can take this variable environment, you can interpolate that inside hire.yaml. So maybe you have a hierarchy that actually has an explicit hierarchy configured in there for the Puppet environment. If you don't want to do that, if you want to break up your hire data and actually install it in separate environments so you can exercise the same values as they escalate up the chain, this you can do like this. So that's typically why you'll see hire data in people's Puppet environments, but this works equally well with any of those designs as long as you can tell Hira to find it. Like I said, before too long, the new directory environments are going to be the only option. Right now, you have to choose between one or the other. So if you've got a master that's set up for config file environments, that disables directory environments. If you're set up for directory environments, that disables config file environments. They don't play well together. It wouldn't be what you wanted to have both at the same time. Config file environments, both of the two styles that I pointed out originally, those are deprecated, so they're going to be removed in Puppet 4, where directory environments will be the only option. I hope that doesn't hold anyone back from upgrading, because I think you're probably going to like what's going on with the future parser, but I don't think it's that painful. I've been involved in a couple of transitions from dynamic environments to directory environments, and if you've got stuff laid out in the same way, things tend to go pretty smoothly. Yes?
Have you had any problems with the caching stuff with directory environments?
Have I had any problems with caching stuff in directory environments? Yes. I have encountered some strange situations where I can't really explain why I'm not seeing the new code. I've got environment timeout set to 0, and sometimes I just don't get it. The place where I can reproduce that most consistently is on a Puppet master I have running on Gen 2, which I have the disk mounted with no 8 time. We don't think that should be causing it, but turning it off doesn't affect it either. So, yes?
Have they, and it may have been fixed or maybe in the works, but with the directory environments, have they gotten it where you can actually set the config version variable inside the local environment?
So, can I set the config version variable on a per environment basis? I have not tried this personally. The documentation that I was reading through last night on this, when I was looking for the definition of an environment, says that that is now the only way to set config version. So, I don't know. We can try that out, but yeah.
I knew there was a ticket open to make that available. It was basically, if you put it in there, last time I looked, it was saying it was an invalid.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't run into that. So it may be that the docs are wrong, but the docs do at least right now say that not only does it work, but it's the only place you can do it. So we can try that later on tonight, because I'll be around and I've got
I think I might be running the version 2 behind, so.
Okay, yeah, I've got a crash and burn Puppet Master with me. So I mean, after I do the demo, we can crash and burn it. So then, one of the first ways that many people arrive at to cope with the problem of putting the right code in the right place in the right environment is to try to create some way to check this up into version control. Most of us probably come up with the same sort of design at first, which is let's check it in as a repository. And one of the options that you have for that would be something like this, where you just take all of Etsy Puppet and check it in there. That has certain advantages. It means that if you want to make a new Puppet Master, you just check out the repo and you're good to go. It also has certain glaring disadvantages, like the certificate authority is in there. You're going to have certificate requests accidentally getting checked in and removed. And then you got private keys stored in there, so now you got to worry about like the integrity of the version control server. And you've got this problem where you've got different modules here, and you've got code that in theory should be able to travel from one directory to another, but you can't do it like you want to with version control. You've got to actually physically copy files back and forth. So when I install Puppet on a Debian-based system and I see that Etsy Keeper has been configured to watch Etsy Puppet, I'm just like, oh my god, why would I want that? Because that's what you get with Etsy Keeper, is you get the Puppet super overmined monolith repo. And I think that when most of us come up with an idea for a monolithic repo that actually works, it's something like this. I call this the environment repository pattern. I don't know if there's an accepted name for it, but you take everything that would be in one environment directory, and you check that in as a branch of the repo. You make separate branches for the different environments you want to have, then you can have code merge back and forth. This works a lot better than the super overmind monolith design, because now when I make changes in my firewall module over here, I can merge them to my other environment, the firewall module over there. And when I'm testing changes in my site.pp here and exercising that code in my development environment to see if those machines go down, after I've got it sorted out, I can promote it to another environment, and it's the same code moving from one place to another. There are still some difficulties, though, with this approach. If you're checking all your modules into the same repository, you're going to have a change log that has intermixed changes from local modules. You're going to be talking about your base firewall stuff here. You're going to be talking about how you configure the web server over there and the database stuff here. And unless it takes some special effort to manually tag revisions in your version control, you end up having kind of a difficult time following some of this stuff that really should be treated as separate projects. I'd like to have a repository for a module to do that. Second thing, and probably the most annoying, is that if I am keeping Puppet Forge modules in one of these monolithic repos, I get these gigantic useless change sets where I'm checking in someone else's code that I want to think of that as an artifact. Like that's just Puppet Labs firewall version 4. That's I don't need that in my change history, and I don't have to do a code review on it. It's like 16,000 lines. And what you end up with is that rolling a single module back and forth. If I want to upgrade this individual module, and then I upgrade this one after it, and I discover this one has a problem, rolling it back is kind of difficult because I got to generate a new change set. So that is kind of the situation that prompted the development of R10K. Around the time that Finch started working on R10K, there were a lot of tools like it. And it's certainly not the only thing out there that does this. You can do it in a shell script. You can write a Python script that does it. There's other tools floating around on GitHub that do the same sort of thing. The advantage of R10K is our support team has been trained on it, so they'll talk to you about R10K. And that, I think that will set the stage for the kind of the workflow that I want to talk about with this R10K tool. And so what is R10K? Has anyone here heard of R10K before? Okay, who's using it? Who's using it in production? I don't have production anymore. That's my excuse. Okay, so
I'm actually outside with Jenkins and messaging to own.
Nice. Y'all might be a little bit bored with this either, but you can correct me when I say something wrong. So R10K is a tool for deploying Puppet environments from version control, and there's kind of 4 things about this that are important. Typically, you want to use it with directory environments. You don't have to. That's optional. It does work with classic style dynamic environments, but things are a little bit more frictionless if you use directory environments for it. You're going to install private modules from Git repositories. Each module is its own Git repository, so you can have versions tagged in there. You can see a history of that module isolated by itself. You can upgrade it, downgrade it, pick the version you want in different environments arbitrarily. You can pick out public modules from the Puppet Forge or from GitHub repositories. Two different ways that I can define a remote module for RTNK to use. But the main defining feature of this is that I'm keeping Puppet environment metadata in a special, what we call a control repository. It's a repository that exists only to describe the state of an individual Puppet environment. So this is what you would see inside an R10K control repository. And I've got an example here. I have a repo like this now that's up on my GitHub, which you'll see in just a minute. But this is kind of a representative example of the sort of stuff that you'll see inside an R10K control repository. First thing you notice is I've got environment.conf. That's the per Puppet environment Puppet settings file. So typically, when I build this, it's going to have that one line: module path equals modules colon dist colon base module path. And I've also got some static modules in here. I've got two modules directories going. One is going to be created by R10K, but this one, the dist directory, is modules that I distribute statically with the environment itself. I've also got Hira data that I'm distributing statically with the environment itself. And I've got a site manifest. All these things kind of go together. If I'm installing a new module version, I might need new Hira data to pass new parameters. I need to have a site manifest that classifies things with the right roles and the right profiles. These things all work together because they describe like the total state of an environment. And when I propagate a change through my different levels of stability, all these things are going to kind of work together. So we deliver them statically with the control repository. But what you don't see here are the modules, the external modules, like the actual workhorse component modules. Where are they? They're described in this file here that we call the Puppet file. And the Puppet file looks something like this. This is a format that we got from a tool called Puppet Librarian, which I think is descended from a family of tools from the Ruby community, but I don't know too much about that. I first encountered this with Puppet Librarian, which didn't really do much for me. And I really first started working with it with R10K. And what it does is it simply describes a collection of modules of specific versions to be installed. And you can see I've got two different formats going here. One, I've got a list of Forge modules with just the namespace and the module name and the version. When I describe a module that way, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get R10K going out to contact the Forge API. It just runs the Puppet module tool to do that on its behalf. It fetches that version and installs it into its workspace area where it's building up the environment. So if I ask for Puppet Labs Firewall 113, it's going to go, and it's going to get Puppet Labs Firewall 113. It's going to put it in the directory as it's staging it to go into the environment. Standard lib, I get that. BCS repo, and so on. This is a very short version that I've kind of shrunken down to fit on the slide. I think that most R10K control repositories end up being, kind of long because you got a lot of modules, and then you end up having some of your own modules too. And that's what's going on in the bottom section. Is I have some modules that I needed to fork, and these revisions are fictitious, but these modules actually exist because I needed them to solve a problem, which was I needed to use this stuff on Gen 2. I'm not joking, don't laugh. I needed to get it working on Gen 2, so I had to add some features to there. Unfortunately, it's not really production grade, so I haven't merged it yet, but that's where I'm managing this stuff from. I forked them, and I have versions in my GitHub, so I'm installing them from there. If I have a module that exists in a Git repository, I can install with a stanza like this. I just say mod, the module name, Git can provide the location, or the URL for that repository, and I can provide an arbitrary reference. I can use a Git revision hash, or I can give the name of a branch, and we'll check that branch every time it runs. Or I can give the name of the tag, and it'll do that. Basically, any valid Git reference is going to work for picking the version of the module to fetch from version control. And so, what you get is something like this. This is what makes it worth the price of entry, which is I've got a repository that describes a single environment. But I make branches of it. I make a branch of that repository and I describe slightly different things. So in this case, I've got my different branches of my control repository. I've got a dev and a pre-prod and a production and a test. What's going to happen when I run R10K, the command to do that, R10K deploy environment -p, is it's going to check each of these branches, and it's going to create an environment based on it on my behalf. So each branch becomes an environment. This is what the environments directory is going to look like after I run it with a code that looks like that. I get my dev environment, and I got my dist, my statically distributed modules, my environment.conf, my higher data's in there, my manifest, and a whole bunch of modules. And the Puppet file ends up on disk, which, you know, it's kind of a little bit weird, but it doesn't do any harm there. At least let you know what exactly got installed. And I got a pre-prod that's slightly different. Production is slightly different, and so on. So suddenly, creating environments has become as simple as git checkout -b and git push. And I think that at this point, we can start thinking about environments in a different way. So the previous definition we looked at said a Puppet environment is a collection of nodes that the master gives certain code and stuff like that. But I think a better way to think about a Puppet environment, and a way that actually reflects the technical reality of it, is that a Puppet environment is an isolated collection of Puppet code and the configuration and the supporting materials that the master can then serve at the appropriate point in the development life cycle. So it looks like this. I've got some integration branches in here. I've got my dev, my pre-prod, my production, and my test. These are kind of stable things. I've got collections of boxes that need certain levels of infrastructure stability in order to solve problems for our organization. I've got to have a certain level of vetting and testing before I can inflict this code and what it might do to the infrastructure on the rest of the team. But creating environments is really cheap. I just fork the repository, make a branch, make some edits, commit it, and push it up. Run R10K, and it's going to deploy a brand new environment for me. So I can start thinking of Puppet environments as being like the living expression of a feature branch. So I create a feature branch, push it out, deploy it. Now I've got what you might call a feature environment. And I think that this requires a certain reconception of what is the production Puppet environment. And I think that at Puppet Labs, we're slightly culpable for, well, maybe entirely culpable for the most popular impression of what is the production environment in Puppet. Well, we gave it the name production, and we called the feature it's using environment, so everyone quite reasonably says, oh, okay, that's where I put the code for my production environment. But I think a better way to look at that is that the production Puppet environment is not the environment that contains your production nodes. It's an environment that contains production-grade Puppet code that can manage any of your machines. And so when you're thinking about like an old-style monolithic deployment where you have separate code that goes to die for certain groups of machines, like the dev boxes need different code. Yeah, that's never going to, it's never going to be like that in prod because we have it split up in different roles. If you think of it this way, you're going to end up writing things a little bit differently, and you're going to end up being able to use a workflow that allows you to exercise the same code in lower environments that you eventually take on to the higher ones. So the workflow ends up looking something like this. I start by making a new branch straight off of the production branch of the control repository. I take the latest stable stuff, I branch from that, I start making my changes. I'm going to update my Puppet file with new module versions because module work is now separate. They're actually modular in the way that I install them. I can revise things independently. I can refer to them by versions. I can tag them if I need to pull in a specific hash. I can do that. If I just want to pull off the head of master, I can do that too. When I've got a collection of modules that's working right, well, I probably also need to update my higher data because I need to pass them different parameters. I'm working on some kind of project, right? I'm not just updating modules for security reasons usually. I'm usually trying to get some new configuration into the environment. Or add some new feature to the existing boxes. I take this and I ship it off as a Puppet environment, a feature environment. And I test that at places that's appropriate. I start on a local development box, and I start out, unit testing it, eventually move on to something where I'm integrating with a little bit more. Then flip it on the developers. If they survive it, they can go to QA, and so on and so on. And eventually, I can merge up to production. The idea is, you want to have the most stable code available that can do anything, right? You want to have stuff that you know can build any of your boxes at least the way they were 6 weeks ago. Because if you end up burning down QA, you got to bring it back up, and they're probably going to say, well, fewer features in there is probably better than nothing at all. I can exercise the same code. So I've got three kind of major advantages to this. One of them is that with a Puppet file, I can describe an unambiguous collection of modules, and I can easily merge it back and forth just by doing simple git operations. Second one is I can test exactly the same Puppet code in earlier environments as good at land in production. And probably one of the most inspiring things about this is that my site manifest and my roles, my profiles, and all the collection of higher data and my Puppet environment configuration can all be described by a single git revision hash. I can say this git hash reflects that environment state. It's talking about 25 separate repositories and a whole bunch of higher data, roles and profiles and all that. I can say it's this version. And that's what I put in config version, is a description of that git hash of the control repository. Did I mention it's free? So, in order to get this going, you will need to change the configuration of your Puppet master. There are some prerequisites to making this work. Without them, you're not going to be able to. We'll talk about that right now. 5 things we got to do. We've got to configure the Puppet master to use directory environments. Or, if you don't want to do that, they do work with classic dynamic environments. That works fine. We need to initialize a control repository. So we need to get a repository going that has a Puppet file in it, and an environment.conf that says I can look in my static models directory and my RTK installed models directory and my base module path. I need to have the R10K gem installed. It's not going to work unless I have the executable. So I need to get that installed. It has several dependencies, so it's going to want a copy of Git. It's going to want some extra material, so it's actually going to go out on the internet and stuff. I need to set it up. So I need to write r10k.yaml, tell it how to find the repository that's going to control it, how to do all this stuff, and where to install it. And lastly, I'm probably going to want to set up some way to run r10k automatically. It gets a little bit old running it by hand all the time, and there are different ways you might want to run it automatically that might work better or worse for your organization. So I would say probably the best thing to do is, if you're revamping the Puppet master for R10K, this is a great time to get on directory environments, because unless you intend to stay on Puppet 3 forever, you will eventually have to start using them. They really are, they're not painful. They probably will work with exactly the setup you have right now with the big file environments. Might look something like this. Important things in this file, again, are base module path and environment path. I got to tell Puppet where to find globally available modules and where to find the environments themselves. I got to set up a control repo. Got to have this basic stuff there. So I'll set up an empty Git repository, and I'll stick a Puppet file in there and start listing some modules. It's like 7 or 8 Git vim replacement commands to turn the output of Puppet module list into a Puppet file. And I think I have it in my vim history from earlier this afternoon. And then I want to copy of my higher data, so I'm going to break my higher data up by environment that's not already that way. Get a copy of my site manifest and my static modules, and then I just push this to a repo that the master can access. Then I want to install R10K. You might do it by logging in and running gem. I'm going to show you a much easier and more Puppety way to do that shortly. You probably already know what it is for those of you who are running it. I say sudo gem install R10K, I've got it. The important thing is I've got to tell R10K where to find its stuff. This file, r10k.yaml, is R10K's config file. Ominous 3 dashes, for those of you who hate YAML. It is YAML. I actually like YAML. We got a cache directory. That's a working area where R10K is going to put stuff that is fetching and staging to go into the environment. And then we've got this hash of sources. And in this example, I've only got one source defined. If you want to, you can define multiple sources. So maybe you want to keep your higher data in a separate repo. You can do that. You define a separate source for it, and it sets off on its own. Most people do it like this. You just have Puppet, you set a base directory that's equal to your environment path, so that's where it's going to install environments. And you tell it the remote. That's the location of the control repository. Note, the user that runs R10K is going to need to have SSH keys, usually to access the Git repository so it can actually fetch this. And once you've done that, you're ready to deploy.
Chris?
Yes?
Mm-hmm. Does it accept, instead of git at gitlab.com, will it accept HTTP?
It does work, yeah.
Sweet. So you don't have to have SSH.
And I think Finch has fixed the problem of being able to get both two sources for both the public and your
Oh,
data.
where you couldn't disable prefixing?
Yeah, I'd actually had a problem where originally when I started, because I had my hair data and my public data as separate repos, so that my environment control repo is actually publicly available, but my hair data is not.
Yes.
And I had defined it as two separate sources in the YAML file for R10K. And when I went to try and run it in deploy, it would deploy one of the sources but not the other source. And
That I have run
I
into.
think that got fixed.
For a while, you had to prefix them. I ran into that with a customer where I had two sources and they had to be prefixed. And then we noticed that the Puppet module we were using to install R10K was installing an ancient version of R10K, so we just bumped the version and the problem went away. The problem that you're talking about, I have not run into.
I think it was fixed in the later versions.
Okay, I probably also haven't been running into it because most people I'm working with are buying it when I say it for the higher data. So. But anyway, yeah, you can use HTTPS sources, and I won't tell anyone outside the room if you don't, but you can use Subversion now too.
Are you running this in Sean?
Yes.
Are you on our Wi-Fi network?
No, I'm plugged into the wall.
Well, sort of same difference, I think.
Okay.
Do you mind terribly sharing your IP address?
No, let me look at it.
Hopefully this will be.
ifconfig doesn't do what I want on this platform. It looks like I am 10.1.2.108.
Are you on 8080?
I'm on port 9090. No problem. So anyway, after I've got r10k.yaml in place, I can start to deploy. That's all it really needs. It needs to have its own prerequisite dependencies and needs to know where to find the repo. You run it, it goes and fetches the repo, it dissects it from the branches inside, reads through the Puppet files, and out comes all this output. You run it in verbose mode, you can see what's going on. After you've done a lot more modules, it tends to be more productive to run it without the -b so that you can actually see the errors among the hundreds and thousands of lines of output. And once you're happy with the way it's working, you got to find some way to run it automatically because, again, logging into the Puppet Master all the time doesn't scale. So ways that I've seen people doing this are you can run it with a cron job. I know someone who's running it with a cron job every 5 minutes right now. You can do it with a Git hook. Whenever that repository receives something, you can tell it to take some action. This is how I do mine. I use GitHub webhooks. If that's not an option for you, obviously that's not going to work. But then that does work because every time it receives something, that repository immediately gets expressed on the Puppet Master. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want to deploy it by hand. So you could use mcollective to run R10K, right? Or you could use Jenkins to build specific revisions in and ship them out at the same time. And probably my least favorite one is using the Puppet Master's Puppet Agent pre-run command to run R10K. Yes, that does cause R10K to get run periodically, but there seriously is nothing about the Puppet Master's own Puppet Agent run that is, in my mind, connected to deploying Puppet code in any way at all. So, I don't know. Maybe that works for you. It is certainly easy to set up. You just change the config file, and you're off and running. The best way to manage R10K is with Zach Smith's R10K module. This is now the only way that I install R10K because I get the same result every time. 4 things that it does, well, 3 things that it does. It manages the gem as dependencies. It manages the configuration file. So you can write keys in Hira that tell this module what to write into r10k.yaml, and it does it. It comes with an mcollective agent and a webhook. So you tell your Git repository to hit the webhook. You run this little Sinatra web server on whatever box you're using to run R10K, and whenever you have a push, it'll do what you say. And I noticed when I was looking into this last night that it's far more famous than R10K itself, at least according to Google. If you Google R10K, this Puppet module is the first hit. And don't tell Finch this, but his repository is not on the first page. So Zach was complaining to me a couple of weeks ago that he's getting all kinds of like reports from users about R10K itself. Oh, this is a Puppet module. But yeah, this really is the best way to manage it. And do we have time for a demo? Yeah. Good, then let's play with Zach R10K. Oh, yeah, let me talk about a couple of things. That might get you. First one, master, which, if you're familiar with Git, you know is the default Git branch name, is an illegal environment name in Puppet, and it won't work. So you have to rename the default branch of your control repo in order to use this. It's not that hard, and you'll get to do git push origin :master and sit. It's fun. Second one is R10K does not install dependencies. We are looking at ways that this will eventually work. But for now, you have to specify dependencies by hand. It's not so costly. When you use the Puppet module tool, it's going to pull in the right versions. You can try this out and rehearse it in lower environments before you get to prod. But I have seen some situations. The most irritating one was we ran up against what I argue is misbehavior of the Puppet module tool with the --ignore dependencies. And our desire to alphabetize a list of modules, we changed the order of them and it stopped installing because ignore dependencies checks dependencies in one direction but not the other. Anyway, you are going to have to do some manual dependency computation. I think it's going to save you work overall. Yes?
What I did to get around that was I have my Jenkins job that does my validation for triggering Puppet Master to update. I had it call Puppet Librarian against the Puppet file and compare it to see if there was anything pulled in different. And if it pulled in anything different that was not already listed, then it would go ahead and throw an error on the job.
I like that. He's got a solution. He's using Puppet Librarian to validate his R10K configuration. I am going to play with that because I think I have a customer who's going to be interested in that. So
That's a cool idea.
I like that. Let's see, where was I? Yes, Hirabug 46. Hiro.yaml can't be consulted on a per environment basis. This is right now the single most popular bug in our bug tracker by a factor of 3. It is a hard problem, so in our defense, we are trying to get the design right before we break environments again because, my God, we just finally got them working right. So for now, what you need to test changes to Hiro.yaml is another Puppet Master. And honestly, if you don't have a second Puppet Master to test Puppet upgrades itself, you're kind of in bad shape. So Hiro.yaml is one thing that you cannot have on a per environment basis. The contents of the Hiro configuration, that is the list of backends, the order of the backends, the location of the data directories in each backend, and the hierarchy itself, those things are global to the Puppet Master process. People have found ways to run multiple Puppet Master processes on the same box that aren't the same, so maybe that works for you. But yeah, Hirabug number 46. I voted for it. Second to last one is agent set environments in Puppet Enterprise 3.7. So if you're using something that's not PE 3.7, this won't affect you. Agent set environments require a special configuration. If you are interested in how this works, please come talk to me because I think I've got it cracked. For everyone else, you just go to puppet.com and set the environment like you used to. In PE 3.7, we've made external node classifier set environments take precedence over agent set ones, and it takes a little bit of extra clicking and thinking to make it work. And the last one is R10K does have subversion support now, so if you're planning on using this to enact a coup d'etat against subversion, it might fail.
So they actually finally did something like at a hard-coded level different between CD and open source?
It's a setting. I mean, it's not the first time we've done this. So in PE 3.3, we shipped with manifest order dependencies on by default when most open source packages aren't. Let's see, something else. I mean, obviously, since the beginning, we've been shipping different configure as a build time option. So it's not the first time we've done something explicitly different from the FOSS builds. This one I don't know, it hit me harder because I like to be able to walk into a customer site knowing how to set up environments, and I discovered that I had to build something a little bit more than I anticipated. It's not that bad. It's just like once you realize it, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So.
Is this the PNC creating a group for each node and classifying environment for each node? The new PNCs I was sharing on, if you said?
That would be one way to do it. The pattern that most of my team are coming to favor is that you can use the node classifier to set environments, but you treat the group hierarchy for environments setting as completely separate from the hierarchy for classification. So they intersect only at default, and I've got this tree down here where every single thing has overrides environment. So I start with production, and I override another group that has something lower than production, and then I can go down to override individual nodes of agent set. And because I'm collecting smaller and smaller groups of nodes, the lower one takes precedence over it. But I don't define any classes or any variables or anything else in there except environments. And then I go over here and I build a separate hierarchy of groups, which also descend from default, that just pick classes and set, I mean, if you want, you can set parameters. I use hire for that. But the main thing is that you've got this one isolated tree of groups that they all have overrides environment, and all it does is set environments. And the one drawback to that is the UI doesn't really help you much. So what we came up with at the last customer I was at was we just alphabetized them. So we put predictable strings at the beginning to say which hierarchy we're in. And it's a little bit ugly, but we know that that's got to be fixed. So that is, the wheels are already in motion as far as making that user experience better. I don't know if there's any code yet, but you know, that's important. So, any other questions before we bootstrap a freshly installed Puppet Master with R10K? Let me know if you think of it. So over here, what do I have? Where am I? Here I've got my control repository. I made a control repository around 5 p.m. today before I got over here. Here's what I put into it. I have got a Puppet file that describes some modules, and I've got some very basic roles and profiles going. I did a bad thing. I'm actually managing a file resource inside of a profile, but I say it's okay because it's an R10K bootstrap, and I promise to take it out later and actually puppetize it with the Puppet module. So I've got Puppet Master. That includes these two profiles here. One of them manages hierarchy, one of them manages R10K itself. I've got an environment.conf that sets the correct paths, and I've got one line of hire data. Let's take a look in here. So here's what I'm going to install into my environment. These Puppet modules at the top are Zach R10K and its dependencies. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to take a freshly installed Puppet Master and get it self-hosting on R10K as fast as possible. So all these things here are dependencies. What's something missing? Oh, maybe you took it out. Maybe you took the first one, doesn't need it anymore. Okay. Down at the bottom, I've just got some examples of installing models from Git. These are, I think, maybe the same models that I had on my previous slide, but these actually exist. I don't know if you want these. If you want an unsupported module version that I think works on Gen 2, then maybe you do. But here are the models I'm going to install. Environment.conf looks like this. Oh, I think the top of my screen is cut off. Yeah, so there's what I've got in there. Is I've got module path equals dist, then modules, and then base module path. And like I said, the roles and profiles, they just include a couple of classes, and hire data has got the one really important piece of configuration in it, which is R10K : remote. This is the location of my example control repository, which I'm going to use to bootstrap the system. So let's take a look at this freshly installed Puppet Master. It's been up for an hour and 39 minutes. There's no R10K there. We've got some gems. None of them is R10K. And I'm not lying, nothing up my sleeve. It's a freshly installed PE master. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get Zach R10K on here. So first I want to say Puppet module install Zach R10K. Because like I said, I don't touch R10K directly anymore. I am executive for me. It's going to download this from the Forge API and all of its dependencies, and it's going to install it in the default global module path. I'm a little terrified because Alex, the tech lead of the Forge, sent me a report about an API slowness thing that happened a couple of days ago. And all I could think was, oh no, I need to use that ride for other people. Stay fast. Hopefully this will be the longest bit. I mean, the PE installation was the longest because, oh my god, VirtualBox is so slow. I have to go back to VMware right away. Did I hear a question?
Yeah, you talking about Finch, is that Adrian Tebow?
Yes. Finch is Adrian Tebow. He is the author of R10K.
He works at Puppet.
He works at Puppet. All right, so that's what we get. Now I can say Puppet module list, and I have got all this stuff on there. I've got all these Puppet modules. So I could write a site manifest and stuff, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to say Puppet apply -e class R10K remote github.com Roddy. Spell my own name right, I feel like. Example-control. So I'm just going to classify this from the command line with Puppet apply. Then that will bootstrap R10K onto the system, set up R10K.yaml. Then I can do a Puppet run. By the way, the package types allow virtual parameter to be changing its default from false to true in a future release.
I've heard that about a few billion times now.
This is how you can tell it's a fresh PE installation, because the first thing that I do is to put a resource default at top scope, which sets that up. Yeah. Just adopt the new behavior immediately, I recommend. All right, so we've installed the R10K gem, and we've got R10K executable. Take a look at R10K.yaml. So it's got my write remote there. So I have R10K installed and configured, but I don't have any of my Puppet code actually deployed. So the next thing I need to do is an R10K deploy. So I'll say R10K deploy environment-pv. Uh-oh. What have I done wrong? Right? Already exists is empty. Huh.
Because your Puppet installed.
Goodbye. All right, we'll just make a new one. This will work fine this time. I think. I don't know. It's a live thing. I only worked once, so. This seemed like it was going to be a little bit less awkward when I was sitting at a desk by myself. These are the dependencies, though. Like, the module tool is going to complain if I don't let them all install. So, did I make a bunch of branches or something? No. Okay. All right. So I've got my modules installed. In kind of a weird intermediate state now, because I've got a production environment there, and R10K.yaml is in place, but I don't have a hire configuration yet that tells the Puppet master how to find the right hire data. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to copy Etsy Puppet Labs, Puppet Environments, Production, Disk Profiles, Files, Hire.yaml to Etsy Puppet Labs, Puppet, Hire.yaml. And now this is definitely going to be awkward because, oh my god, it takes so long to restart. So I need to restart this PE Puppet server. Yes, I did command. This is what hung me up for 15 minutes because I forgot. Whenever you change the hierarchy configuration, you have to restart the Puppet Master. And it's always so embarrassing when I remember that because this is like the third or fourth time that I've forgotten. Yeah, if you change the hierarchy configuration, you have to restart the Puppet Master. I was trying to figure out, well, when I run it in the terminal, it gives me the right key, but when I run the agent run, it's the wrong thing. So, yeah, that's probably the thing that was the hardest about this demo is remembering. Once I've got hire.yaml installed, I can't actually use it until I bounce the Puppet Master because everything is going to look completely right until I do the Puppet run. So, do I have a master yet? Looks like I do. It's got a plugin sync. I need like VMware and Fiber. I think this will be really quick. Okay, so I'm not worried about that because those both work. It's going to install the right thing because I remembered to fix hire.yaml this time. All right then, let's let it rip. So we'll do a Puppet agent run.
You have a team or partnership. Do you have like a clustering YAML software?
So I upgraded to Yosemite without permission, and it broke VMware 5 that I had, and I didn't want to confess to ops, so I just told myself, well, you know, I like using VirtualBox because it works with Vagrant, and I really should get down to this one hypervisor anyway. And I discovered this week, oh wow, it's a lot slower. So I'm going to put in a ticket and say, I don't have Google 7, please. Okay, so I've got a run here. I've got installing the right rtnk.yaml. It didn't change hire.yaml, which I like, which means that I think I should be able to do rtnk deploy environment-pv, or I guess just -p. I think it's self-hosting now. I think that rtnk is set up to install the right stuff, and the stuff that it's installing configures rtnk properly. So I can do a Puppet agent run, and it will be a no-op, and I can do an rtnk deploy, it won't touch anything. This control repo is on my GitHub if you want it. Sorry.
Waiters around.
So, I don't know about you, but I always feel that you know that everything is right when you do the Puppet agent run, nothing changes. Like I think that is the real conclusion to a demo. Is that look, Puppet is now doing nothing. Questions? If I don't know, I'll make Jacobs answer. He knows what's up to. Yes.
Directory environments.
Yeah.
At what PE version do they become available? Because I'm too lazy to look it up. I'm running 3.2. That's why I'm asking.
It's on 3.3.
Okay. What I thought, I figured I'd ask. All my testing, though, with R10K, I've done with 3.2, and everything's working. In my test lab, everything's working just fine. My test lab being my virtual boxes running at home on my desktop.
Yeah, I mean, I am kind of exaggerating. I'm kind of exaggerating the draw of directory environments because R10K works completely and totally fine with legacy config file environments. It's just eventually you'll want to be on Puppet 4. I'm sure. I don't know. I haven't actually tried it yet. Maybe it's terrible, but I doubt it because it's got an iterator. We can close bug 86.
Yeah. It's like I said, all my testing, I haven't had any problems. I do like the directory environments, and can't wait to get there. don't want to have. We just went to 3.2. I think finally last August we finished the upgrade from 2.8 to 3.2, and yeah, and I just want to get that behind us a little bit before we do the next jump.
Anyway, I think the next thing that we just had is open Q&A, right?
Yeah, just whatever discussion or doing a little bit, but it's just what we do. That's it.
I need to visit the restroom. So. You guys take over.
Thanks, Chris. Later.
Thank you.
Who was it wanted a beer and which one did you want?
Yeah, we got all drinking out of the house here. I apologize. We normally only have about 25 people, so it was crowded tonight. So, I'll make arrangements for next time when it's large. But appreciate everyone coming. And like I said, if anyone wants to speak or be involved with the user group, we'd love that. So, let us know if you want to get involved. See me afterwards, or hit us up on the meetup. Thank y'all.
Did this help you in understanding where we're going?
Yeah,
A little bit better, because I mean, I know when I've explained this to you and Chris, I haven't done that good a job explaining it. I've gone kind of fast. Yeah, that's true.
I'll see you tomorrow, man.
Well, it's always good to have references from your last job.
We can make it simple for an engineer to
So that's